The response from Sabalenka wasn't simply viral. It became the most often repeated a turning point in tennis history. What took place that day courtside wasn't meant to be captured on camera. A quick look, a muttered remark, and all of a sudden the stadium as a whole held its breath. This was no longer concerned about the contest. This was private. And what came next would split the tennis community into two groups: Aryna's supporters and those who called her out. However, this is what they weren't seen by cameras. This is what really occurred when universes met at the most surprising moment. January, Melbourne Park, Australia, 2026. The Open was going strong, and Aryna Sabalenka was doing her speciality: controlling. She would enter this competition as the reigning winner, eager to win her third championship in a row. She was clocking serves at speeds that made even seasoned professionals wince. Her surgical ground strokes were used. She wasn't only engaging in tennis. She was creating a declaration. However, the other side of the net stood someone the world was just starting to take note. Alexandra Eala, a 21-year-old from the Philippines who had battled her way through qualifying, eliminated two players who were sitting, and was now standing on rod lever arena, is up against one of the biggest, powerful factors in tennis for women. This was more than simply a match for Eala. This was her time. The instant she had been striving for since she was a child, striking balls on deteriorated courts in Manila. Eala had something more that someone else, one day. Sitting courtside and her partner was in the player's box. A social media and up-and-coming Filipino actor Mateo Ramirez is an influencer. He was flown in just for this game, sharing narratives on Instagram with captions such as "Observing magnificence happen in real time" and "I'm very proud of you, sweetie." His presence was not out of the ordinary. Participants often have partners, family, and friends courtside. It is a component of the game, of the assistance network. However, no one anticipated the kind of attention he would sketch. Not from the throng, not from the pundits, but from Sabalenka herself. The game began as planned. Sabalenka in the second game, Eala's serve was broken. Her strength was astonishing. Eala engaged in combat back with grace, drop shots, and cunning angles, the kind of tennis that causes underdogs win over crowds. By the conclusion of the first set, Sabalenka had won it 6-3. However, Eala had achieved a victory. Respect is more precious. The audience was on beside her side. She won every point, amid thunderous cheers. Additionally, Mateo was standing for each and every one of them, applauding, yelling, and recording on his phone, experiencing each moment as if it were a scene from a movie. He was unmissable. Seated in the first row, with a brilliant Eala's initials on a yellow shirt embroidered on the breast. The broadcast, he was often captured on video, focusing on his responses, his enthusiasm, his pure happiness. At that point, the looks began. Sabalenka, strolling after a changeover, returning to her bench, turned to face Eala's box. Not a light-hearted gaze, a long, thoughtful look. Her body was inscrutable, but her expression, everything was expressed via words. She cocked her head a little, her mouth clenched, and for an instant, the mask of power slipped. She was troubled by something. It was also noted by commentators. One of on broadcast, they made a jest that Sabalenka may be curious in the identity of the yellow-clad man, stealing all of the time spent on camera. The alternative laughed it off. However, viewers they noticed anything different at home. They observed strain. They saw the start of something that would blow up in different ways nobody was able to forecast. Additionally, as the excitement on that court started, the set moved. It wasn't simply tennis. No longer. This was going to become into anything much more significant. What takes happen when a champion loses concentration? When feelings gain control of the scoreboard, the response was it's going to happen in real time. The Eala served to begin the second set. Now that she had established her beat, the audience sensed it. She served with self-assurance, blending her shots, maintaining. Sabalenka speculates. For an instant, it felt as if this may go far, that the underdog may really pull off the impossibility. However, Sabalenka wasn't the tennis shook me. She felt shaken by something very different. Throughout the Eala was ready to serve in the third game, Matteo got to his feet once again. This time, he didn't only applaud. He yelled loudly enough that it was picked up by the courtside microphones up. He spoke in Tagalog, although the emotion was pure and universal. Support and unadulterated love. The cameras instantly swung in his direction, and the TV replayed the scene within seconds. Instantly, social media lighted up. Videos of Matteo applauding began circulating with captions on Twitter such as "Boyfriend of the Year" and "This is how support emerges." At that point, Sabalenka gave him a straight glance. Not at this time a complete, continuous gaze. At the baseline, she stood, bouncing the ball and getting ready to come back serve. However, rather of concentrating on ally, her gaze was fixed on Matteo. The camera absolutely captured it. Her look wasn't rage. It wasn't irritation. It was different. Something that people would strive for the next 48 hours to decode. Was it distraction, jealousy, disgust? No one was certain, but everybody had a viewpoint. Ally observed as well. It was evident in the manner the shoulders tensed up. The way she looked over to her box, then back to Sabalenka, perplexed. She had no idea what was occurring, but she sensed the change. The mood had shifted. What was meant to be a tennis match was becoming uncomfortable. Anything intrusive. Sabalenka provided an unreturnable rocket down the tee. She returned to the baseline without rejoicing, without recognizing the point. She had a stone face, yet her eyes continued to wander. Returning to the box, returning to Matteo. Additionally, each time they did, the tension increased. By the switchover, social media was in complete disarray. Every frame was being examined by readers. Body language specialists were cited in tweets in real time. Fan sites were publishing comparative analyses of Sabalenka's responses. Some individuals stood up for her, claiming that she was just confined in athletes get fierce. Others claimed that it was unprofessional, that she was not entitled to stare down a person who wasn't even having fun. However, the actual moment, the one that would characterize everything, was yet arriving. Sabalenka sat down on her sitting, covering her head with a towel. She turned slightly in the direction of the chair umpire and suddenly, hardly heard on the broadcast stream, she said a statement. The microphones failed to capture the whole phrase, just bits and pieces, just enough to cause a frenzy on the internet. Really essential, courtside diversion. That was all that was heard, yet it was sufficient. The conjecture erupted. Was she whining about Matteo? Was she inquiring? For him to be taken out? Was she making a claim? Was his presence a diversion? The commentators attempted to move on, but there was harm done. The video became viral. Just a few minutes. Posts from TikTok accounts it with overlays of dramatic music. Twitter threads examined every potential interpretation. Fan pages on Instagram transformed it into memes. Additionally, Alexandra Eala was still engaging in combat and playing. However, now you could see it in her eyes. This was no longer limited to tennis. This can turn into a personal matter. And what came follow would either characterize her as a combatant or ruin her entirely. The nobody was prepared, and the whole world was watching. For what followed? When the court turns into a stage and the game turns into a spectacle, who is in charge of the story? The response was going to be written in real time. The third match of the second Eala was serving at 1-1 in the set. She just defended against 2 break points and the crowd was electrifying. Each time she took home a Matteo was standing at that point. Each and every he screamed when she made a fantastic shot. Her name. He wasn't attempting to be a diversion. He was merely being there. Being encouraging, being just what a partner ought to be. However, to Sabalenka, it was excessive. As they took opposing sides for in the subsequent match, Sabalenka passed the chair of the umpire. She reduced her speed, looked up, and this time, the everything was captured by microphones. Are you able to tell him to sit down, please? This is not a circus, but a professional match. Like a grenade, words hung in the air. The umpire nodded, taken aback. Slightly, but didn't react right away. Walking to her bench, Sabalenka's face, her jaw was set firmly. She wasn't supporting down. She desired an outcome, and she wanted it right now. The broadcast crew heard it was heard by the producers, and inside seconds, it was decided to cut away. However, it was too late. The video had been captured on screen by 12 viewers of the live broadcast. Inside, it was on Twitter for 5 minutes. In 10, it received 500,000 views. In 20, it was popular all over the world. The remark section turned into a combat zone. She's correct. He is acting disrespectfully. Are you serious? Allow the man to back his girlfriend. Sabalenka is simply upset that she's losing concentration. This is the result of pressure is too much for you to handle. Matteo did nothing is wrong. This is just jealousy. She is a victor. She is fully entitled to demand concentration. The world of tennis was split. Players from the past offered their opinions. Analysts debated it on live broadcasts. Even those who weren't tennis fans were all of a sudden courtside experts' manners. And during it all, the game persisted, but hardly. Eala's game fell separate. You could see it happening in real time. Her serve started missing. Her ground strokes lost their edge. She double faulted twice in one game. The scoreboard didn't lie. Sabalenka broke her serve, then broke again. The second set ended 6-1. The match was slipping away, and it wasn't because of skill. It was because of everything else. The pressure, the attention, the words that shouldn't have been said. When I sat down after losing the second set, she didn't look at her box. She didn't look at Matteo. She just stared at the ground, tears pooling in her eyes. The camera zoomed in, and the world watched a young woman trying to hold herself together under impossible circumstances. This wasn't supposed to happen. This was supposed to be her breakthrough moment, her fairy tale run. But instead, it had turned into a nightmare. Matteo, sensing the shift, sat down. He stopped cheering, stopped moving. He just watched, helpless, as the woman he loved fought a battle she couldn't win. Not because she wasn't good enough, but because the game had become about something bigger than tennis. And Sabalenka, she wasn't celebrating. She wasn't smiling. She was just playing, mechanical, efficient, cold. She'd gotten what she wanted, silence, command. But at what cost? The crowd, once neutral, had turned. Boos started creeping into the applause. People were uncomfortable. This didn't feel right, and everyone knew it. By the time the third set started, the narrative had completely shifted. This wasn't about who would win. It was about what had been lost. Respect, sportsmanship, the invisible line between competition and cruelty. And as Sabalenka served to open the final set, the internet was already writing the ending. Not the one happening on the court, but the one that would define both of their legacies forever. When does competition cross the line into something darker? When does a champion become the villain? The answer was unfolding live, and nobody could look away. The match ended in 87 minutes. Sabalenka won 63-61-62. She shook hands with Eala at the net. A brief, cold exchange. No words, no eye contact, just protocol. She waved to the crowd, packed her bag, and left the court without a post-match interview. That alone was unusual. Champions don't skip interviews. But Sabalenka knew. She knew what was waiting for her. The questions, the backlash, the storm that had been brewing since the second set. Additionally, she was right. Within an hour, the official Australian Open social media accounts were flooded. Not with highlights of Sabalenka's dominance, not with praise for her technical brilliance, but with clips of the stare, the comment. The moment everything shifted, the algorithm fed the fire. TikTok videos with millions of views dissected every second of the interaction. Twitter threads with tens of thousands of retweets debated whether Sabalenka had crossed a line. One video posted by a tennis fan account with over 200,000 followers went nuclear. It was a split-screen edit. On one side, Sabalenka's cold stare toward Matteo. On the other, Eala's face as she fought back tears during the changeover. The caption read, "This is what happens when ego kills the spirit of the game." It got 4.3 million views in 12 hours. Professional players started weighing in. Some defended Sabalenka. A former Wimbledon champion tweeted, "Players have the right to request focus and professionalism. Courtside behavior matters." But others pushed back hard. A recently retired American star posted, "I've had families scream their lungs out for me courtside. That's tennis. That's love." This wasn't about distraction. This was about control. The debate wasn't just about tennis no longer. It became about power dynamics, about women being told to smile and stay quiet, about privilege and respect, about whether champions have more rights than rising stars. Every angle was analyzed. Every opinion was weaponized. And then Matteo spoke. He posted a single Instagram story, no caption, just a photo of Alexandra Eala, mid-swing, eyes fierce, determination radiating from every pixel. It was an obvious message. He wasn't backing down. He wasn't apologizing. He'd been there to support the woman he loved, and nothing about that was wrong. The post got millions of impressions. Comments flooded in. A few praised him for standing his ground. Others told him to stay out of it, that he'd made things worse. Fan pages turned him into a symbol. Memes were created. Matteo versus Sabalenka became a trending topic. It was absurd. It was exhausting. And it was completely out of command. Meanwhile, Eala stayed silent. She didn't post, didn't tweet, didn't release a statement. Her team said she needed time to process, that she'd speak when she was ready. But her silence only made the speculation louder. Was she angry at Sabalenka? Was she embarrassed by Matteo's visibility? Was she heartbroken that her moment had been stolen? Sports journalists started writing think pieces. Large outlets operated headlines, such as "The Courtside dispute tennis was broken by that." Additionally, when champions turn into bullies, the Sabalenka issue. Opinion pieces discussed whether the WTA required more stringent regulations regarding courtside actions. Podcasts devoted to the whole episodes related to the event. Everybody had something to express. Everybody had a side. And one question remained throughout it all, appearing repeatedly in every tweet, every comment section, and every video response. How would Sabalenka respond? When she did speak at last? Would she "I'm sorry"? Would she put in more effort? Would she said she had been misinterpreted? The world was ready. Additionally, the longer she remained quiet, the more loud the sound became. Because in the era of social silence is not neutral in the media. Quietness is a declaration. Her was overwhelming. Within a world in which every second is captured on camera, each word is examined, and each reaction turns into satisfaction. Who is allowed to command the narrative? The struggle for the story was only getting started. 48 hours following the game, Sabalenka eventually broke her quiet. Not via a press conference, rather than via an official declaration, but through a meticulous created a post on Instagram. The image was an isolated image of her on the court in the middle fist clenched in celebration. The caption was succinct, tactical, and stated simultaneously everything and nothing. It's a mental game, tennis. Honor the court, honor the battle. Next up round. That was all. No regret, no recognition of the dispute, no mention of Matteo or Eala, only a vague nod to expertise encased in inspiring words. The remark section instantly blew up. Supporters commended her for maintaining her strength. Critics referred to it as a non-apology. Some claimed that she was being sophisticated by not participating. Others claimed that she was acting cowardly by not taking responsibility for her words. Her sponsors continued to silence. Her coach issued a boring assertion regarding concentrating on the competition. The WTA did not comment, stating that it was an on-court issue behavior that did not contravene any official regulations. In theory, Sabalenka hadn't done anything improper. She had created a "ask the umpire." She hadn't shouted, had not made a fuss, but the public opinion court is unconcerned. Regarding the verdict and technicalities was inside already. In the meantime, ISA eventually talked. She uploaded a video to her Instagram. No scripting, no makeup, just sitting in her hotel room. She looked worn out but calm. She gave a speech for every word mattered during the 2 minutes. "I came to play tennis in Melbourne, to compete at the greatest level, in order to represent my nation. I didn't come here for theatrical purposes. I didn't come to participate of a moment going viral. However, I also didn't to be silenced, come here. My partner was helping me. That's what individuals who adore you. They appear. They rejoice. They have faith in you. When the world doesn't. If you find that distracting, then perhaps he is not the issue. Perhaps it has to do with how we perceive assistance, how we see public love for women. I lost that game, but not as a result of him. I lost because I allowed the noise to me. And I promise not to repeat that error. More than 6 million people watched the video in the initial 24 hours. It was distributed by prominent sports publications, cited in articles, featured on talk shows in the morning, and there was an overwhelming response. The story changed. What was once a contentious dispute turned into a rallying weep. Isa was more than just a tennis player. No longer. She served as a voice and a representation of resiliency, of refusing to be decreased. Matteo shared her video again. With a straightforward caption, "I'm proud of you, the tennis community divided evenly every time." Even more. Some athletes openly endorsed Isa. One of the top 10 WTA players tweeted, "Let's normalize loudly expressing love. Let's normalize unashamed support." Others remained silent, not wanting to get involved in the mess. A few intensified their efforts on endorsing Sabalenka, contending that in the workplace, mental focus is crucial. Sports and that athletes are entitled to manage their surroundings. Brands began to pay attention. Isa's adherent counts surged. Sponsoring questions flooded in. She would grow more well-known in 3 days than she was in her whole professional life. However, it wasn't the type of she desired fame. It wasn't based on her backhand or her will to fight. It was based on being the story's underdog that was not a story at all. And Sabalenka made her way through the next round, followed by the following one. She continued to triumph and rule, but the interview after the game was awkward. Each press conference featured a minimum of one inquiry regarding the event. She managed them with icy professionalism, repeating the same line in different ways. "I'm here to play tennis. That's all." However, the sponsors were observing. The public relations teams were planning. Because in today's sports, your brand is more than just your performance. It's about your narrative, your values, people's reactions to seeing your visage. And at the moment, a lot of people's feelings regarding Aryna were not good. Sabalenka. It was unclear if she cared, if winning was sufficient, or whether she knew in her heart that some once broken things cannot be repaired with awards. When the game is over, but who truly prevails in the ongoing battle? Moreover, what does it cost to win when the world is observing? After 3 weeks, the Australian Open had ended. Sabalenka had triumphed once more. Her 3rd title in a row. She would destroyed every opponent she came across, dropped just 1 set during the whole competition, and solidified herself as one of her most ardent players' generation. The award ceremony was perfect. She spoke politely. She thanked her supporters, her team, and the organizers of the tournament. She grinned for the cameras. She raised the trophy. However, something was lacking. The audiences there was a difference in energy. The cheers were courteous rather than electric. Social media reactions were subdued. The headlines concentrated more on her dominance and less on the dispute she would never completely addressed. Even in triumph, the shadow of that instant persisted. The gaze, the remark, the clash of egos on a court that was meant to be about tennis. However, Eala had left Melbourne with nothing to show for awards. However, she took something with her. Anything else? A voice, a platform, and a narrative that individuals with whom they were connected. She provided interviews in which she discussed the demands of being a rising star, regarding the disparate treatment of women, regarding what it means to have strong support in a society that frequently requests that women shrink. She transcended her role as a player. She developed into a movement. And Matteo remained by her side, more cautious, quieter now, but still there. He was aware of the price of visibility, but he hadn't felt sorry for a single instant. Because genuine love doesn't work with cameras. It simply appears. And sometimes that's sufficient. The tennis world progressed in the manner that does so every time. New competitions, new rivalries, and fresh drama. However, people didn't forget. The thought pieces continued to arrive. Podcasts reviewed the event months later. It turned into a sports case study. Courses in psychology that focus on the mental game and outside forces. It turned into a point of reference in discussions regarding fans' conduct, courtroom manners, and the champion's obligations. However, beyond all the speculation and analysis, something more profound had come to light. A truth about contemporary sports that no one wanted to say aloud. That we don't simply keep an eye out for the game. We're keep an eye out for the conflict, the emotion, and the times when people break under the burden of expectation. We assert that we desire good sportsmanship, but we eat the drama. We claim to cherish respect, but we click on the contentious issue. Additionally, they're caught in the middle, players. Anticipated to be fighters on the court and role models from it. Anticipated to be vulnerable, but not overly so, powerful but not frightening, competitive but not aloof. They are questioned to be flawless while understanding that perfection is impossible. And when they don't succeed, when they demonstrate their humanity in ways that make us uneasy, we don't extend forgiveness effortlessly. Sabalenka is and always will be regarded as a victor. 3 titles at the Australian Open, a serve that could overcome sound barriers, a rival who never gave up. However, she will also be recalled for that instant, for the gaze, for the words, for the manner in which she made a young athlete feel insignificant on the largest phase of her life. Whether fair or not, legacy is more than just your accomplishments. It's about who you hurt and how you win. Along the route, Eala will live on in memory. Additionally, not only as the defeated underdog, however, as the woman who declined to be silent, who defended her right to be helped, who transformed a moment of suffering into a platform for transformation. Her profession is only getting started. And whether or not if she ever achieves a Grand Slam, she's already won a more valuable prize. Be respectful. Because ultimately, tennis is merely a game. However, how we treat one another, the manner in which we arrive for the individuals we care about, the manner in which we power when we possess it, that's what endures. People remember that. The question that remains is this one. The one that no one can definitively respond to. The one who will continue this tale long after the viral clips fade. Was Sabalenka wrong for demanding focus? Or was she simply doing what champions do? Controlling her environment, eliminating distractions, protecting her mental space? And if it was appropriate for her to speak up, why does it feel like something at all was lost that day? Why does winning feel hollow when it comes at the expense of someone else's dignity? Maybe there's no right answer. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the game isn't black and white. Maybe it's all shades of gray played out under bright lights, dissected by millions, and never fully understood by anyone who wasn't standing on that court, feeling the weight of the making unfeasible decisions in real time. This is what we do know. Tennis will go on. Champions are going to rise and descend. The underdogs will battle. Cameras will record every look, every word, every feeling. And we'll maintain observing, continuing to argue, and continuing to select sides. Since that's the game, we're truly having fun. Not the one found on the court, but the one mentioned in the remarks, the one within our hearts, the place where we determine our values, the people we support, and what kind of world we wish to create. One moment at a time, courtside. This wasn't merely a game of tennis. It was a mirror, held up to us all. A reminder that humans participate in sports with egos, feelings, and everything in between. Champions aren't always heroes, that underdogs aren't always innocent. And occasionally, the most winning is not the goal of important battles. They have to do with how we decide to fight. The tale of Aryna Sabalenka and that a viral moment will be remembered for years to come. Come on. It will be examined, discussed, and mentioned each time a comparable the situation develops. Because these times matter, they influence the culture of the athletics. They affect how the subsequent generation of players appears, acts, and engages in competition. Finally, the question that really counts is the one you must provide your own response. How do you use the power that you possess? And how do you recover if you don't?